I was working I was working the ticket counter at Victoria Station in London when this American family walked up. Not to the back of the line, not even close. They just walked straight to the front where I was helping someone else. The mom waved her credit card at me like I was a waiter. "Excuse me, we need tickets to Edinburgh, now." I pointed behind her. There were maybe 20 people waiting. She looked confused. "But we're in a hurry," she said. Like that changed anything. The man I was actually helping just stared at her. The whole queue went silent. You could feel the British rage building. Nobody said anything because that's not how we do things here. But the energy was intense. I had to explain that yes, even tourists have to wait in line. She acted like I'd just told her the sky was green. Another time, I watched an American couple at a bakery in Paris try to order by shouting over 3 people already being served. The baker completely ignored them, just kept helping the customers in order. The couple got louder, started waving money. The French people in line looked at them like they were watching Aliens Land. Finally, someone explained in broken English that you wait your turn. The American guy said, "In New York, we just get what we need fast." The baker didn't even respond, just kept making sandwiches like nothing happened. My friend works at a museum in Amsterdam. She told me about this group of American students who saw the entry line wrapping around the building. So they just walked inside through the exit. Security stopped them. They genuinely didn't understand the problem. "The door was open," one girl said. Like that was the rule. You see an open door, you go through it. My friend had to walk them back outside and point at the 100 people who'd been waiting properly. They were annoyed about it. Actually annoyed that they had to follow the same system as everyone else. I started collecting these stories because they happen constantly. Americans abroad getting confused by the most basic cultural things. And it's not always cues. Sometimes it's tipping. Sometimes it's measuring distances. Sometimes it's just assuming everywhere works exactly like home. The confusion is real on both sides. Locals can't believe what they're seeing. Americans can't understand why everyone's upset. And honestly, it makes for the best stories. These are real situations where cultures crashed into each other in the funniest ways possible. No exaggeration needed. Just Americans trying to navigate a world that doesn't run on American rules. Let me tell you what I've seen. I worked at Heathrow Airport for 2 years. The number of Americans who got confused by basic signs was wild. This one guy asked me where the bathroom was. I pointed at the giant sign that said "toilets" with an arrow. He looked at me like I was speaking another language. "No, the bathroom," he repeated. I said that's what the sign means. He walked away frustrated and asked someone else. Took him 10 minutes to figure out that toilets and bathrooms are the same thing here. Another passenger came to my desk completely panicked. Her flight to Edinburgh was boarding, and she couldn't find Gate B. I looked at her boarding pass. It said Gate B12. I pointed at the massive sign above us that said Gates B1, B20 with an arrow pointing left. She looked at it and back at me. "But where's Gate B?" she asked. She thought B was one gate and the number was extra information. I had to physically walk her to the gate area and show her how the numbering system worked. She missed her flight anyway because she'd spent 40 minutes asking different people where Gate B was. My cousin manages a hotel in Barcelona. He told me about an American couple who checked in and immediately complained that their room was too small. They'd booked a standard European hotel room. He explained that European rooms are smaller than American ones. The husband got upset. "For this price, we should get a real room," he said. My cousin showed them the room measurements from the booking site. They'd read them. They just didn't believe the room would actually be that small. The wife asked if they could get a refund because she couldn't live like this for 3 days. They ended up staying but left a 1-star review, saying the photos were misleading, even though the dimensions were clearly listed. A friend who drives for a tour company in Ireland deals with this constantly. Americans get in the van and immediately ask why he's sitting on the wrong side. He explains that in Ireland, and most of the world actually, the driver sits on the right. One woman didn't believe him. She said it was backwards, and dangerous. The whole drive she kept commenting on how strange it felt. Every turn she'd gasp like they were about to crash. At the end, she asked if he needed special training to drive this way. He'd been driving for 20 years. I saw a family at a train station in Munich arguing with the ticket machine. It had options for English, German, French, Spanish, and Italian. The dad kept pressing buttons and getting frustrated. Finally, he asked me for help. The issue was that he couldn't figure out how to pay in dollars. The machine only took euros. He showed me his American credit card and said it should work everywhere. I explained that the machine charges in euros because we're in Germany. He wanted to know why it couldn't just convert the price for him. I said it does, automatically, through his bank. He didn't trust that. Ended up going to a counter and paying in euros anyway, but complained the whole time about how complicated Europe makes things. This happens with power outlets too. I can't count how many Americans I've seen standing in hotel rooms holding their phone chargers, staring at the wall outlets like it's a puzzle. One guest came to the front desk and said the outlets were broken. I went to check. The outlets were fine. He just needed an adapter. He'd traveled from America to England without researching that we use different plugs. He asked why we couldn't just use normal outlets. I told him these are normal here. He bought an adapter from us for £10 and later complained that we were scamming tourists by not including adapters in every room. My sister works at a restaurant in Prague. American tourists constantly ask for ice water. She brings them water. They send it back because it's not cold enough. She brings ice. They complain it's too much ice. She's learned to just bring room temperature water and a small cup of ice on the side. But they still seem disappointed. One guy asked why European restaurants are against cold drinks. She told him, "We're not against anything. We just don't refrigerate water by default." He said that was uncivilized. She stopped explaining after that. The funniest one I personally saw was at a grocery store in Copenhagen. An American woman stood in the produce section holding a cucumber, looking completely lost. I asked if she needed help. She said, "How much does this cost?" I pointed at the price sign. She said, "But that's in crowns." I told her yes. Danish crowns, the currency of Denmark. She asked if they took dollars. I said no. She wanted to know how she was supposed to buy groceries. I suggested she exchange money at a bank or use a credit card. She looked genuinely stressed and said she'd just assumed Europe used dollars. She left without buying anything. I used to teach English in Spain. One of my American students asked me if people in Spain spoke Mexican. I said no, we speak Spanish. She said, "But isn't that the same thing?" I explained that Spanish originated in Spain and Mexican Spanish is a dialect. She looked shocked. She'd thought Spain spoke Mexican because there are a lot of Mexican people who speak Spanish. The logic was completely backwards. She'd never considered where the language actually came from. Another student asked if Madrid was close to Paris. I pulled up a map and showed him. He was genuinely surprised they were in different countries. He thought Europe was smaller. Like you could drive between major cities in an hour, he said. I told him Madrid to Paris is about 12 hours by car. He didn't believe me at first. Checked Google Maps himself. Then he said, "Why don't you guys build faster roads?" Like, that was the issue. My friend worked at a tour company in Rome. An American couple asked if they could visit the Eiffel Tower that afternoon. She said no, that's in Paris. They asked how far. She said about 1,500 kilometers. They looked confused. She converted it to miles. About 900 miles. The husband asked if there was a train. She said yes, but it takes about 11 hours. They seemed annoyed. The wife said, "Everything online made Europe seem so small." They'd planned a day trip to hit Rome, Paris, and Barcelona, all in one day. They had to completely redo their itinerary. I was at a pub in Dublin when an American guy asked the bartender what part of England we were in. The bartender froze. The entire pub went quiet. Someone politely told him we were in Ireland. The American said, "Yeah, but that's in England, right?" Another person explained that Ireland is its own country. The American argued that he'd always thought Ireland was like a state or province of England. The bartender just walked away. Someone else gave him a very firm history lesson. He left pretty quickly after that. A museum guide in Berlin told me about an American tourist who asked where the Berlin Wall was. She said parts of it are still standing and showed him a preserved section. He took photos. Then he asked when they were going to tear down the rest. She said they keep it as a memorial. He said, "But the Cold War is over, right?" She confirmed it ended in the early 90s. He genuinely suggested they should finish the job and knock it all down, because it was depressing. She didn't know how to respond to that. I watched an American family in Athens ask their tour guide if the Parthenon was built by the Romans. The guide said no, the ancient Greeks. The dad said, "But aren't Greeks and Romans the same thing?" The guide spent 10 minutes explaining the difference between ancient Greece and ancient Rome. The family still looked confused. At the end, the mom said, "So they were just neighbors?" The guide said yes, essentially. The mom seemed satisfied with that extremely simplified answer. My coworker is from Norway. She told me about an American exchange student who asked if they used normal money in Norway. My coworker asked what normal money meant. The student said dollars. My coworker explained that almost every country has its own currency. The student was shocked. She thought dollars were universal, and other countries just had special money for tourists. She'd been in Norway for 2 weeks and hadn't realized she needed to exchange currency. She'd been using her credit card for everything and didn't understand why her bank statement looked wrong. I met an American backpacker in Scotland who asked me what language Scottish people spoke. I said English with a Scottish accent. He said, "Not Scottish." I explained Scottish Gaelic exists, but most people speak English. He argued that in movies, Scottish people sound different, so it must be a different language. I told him that's called an accent. He didn't fully accept that. He spent his whole trip thinking he was in a foreign language country and getting impressed every time someone spoke to him in fluent English. A hostel owner in Budapest shared this story. An American guest asked if it was safe to drink the water. She said yes, completely safe. He said he'd heard that European water makes Americans sick. She asked where he heard that. He said his friend got sick in Mexico once. She pointed out that Mexico and Hungary are extremely different places on different continents. He said, "Yeah, but it's all foreign water." She gave up trying to explain. The best one I heard was from a friend in Amsterdam. An American tourist asked him if the Anne Frank house was based on a true story. My friend said yes. It's a museum in the actual house where Anne Frank hid during World War II. The tourist said, "Oh, so it's like a historical recreation?" My friend said no, it's the real place. The tourist was amazed. He'd thought it was just inspired by real events, not the actual location. He'd somehow separated the story from reality in his mind. I lived in Germany for 3 years. The quiet hours rule confuses every American. You're not supposed to make loud noise on Sundays or after 10 p.m. on weekdays. My American neighbor didn't know this. First Sunday there, he mowed his lawn at 9 a.m. 3 neighbors came out to stop him. He didn't understand the problem. "It's daytime," he said. They explained the Sunday rule. He thought they were joking. He wasn't trying to be rude. He genuinely didn't know that keeping Sundays quiet was an actual law in many places. After the police showed up with a noise complaint, he learned fast. Another American friend stayed with me for a week. She did laundry at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday. The washing machine was loud. My neighbor knocked on the door at 11:30. Very politely asked if we could stop. My friend was confused. "It's not even midnight yet," she said. I had to explain that after 10 p.m. you avoid loud activities. She said in America she does laundry whenever she wants. I told her that in apartments here, you think about shared walls and sleeping neighbors. She finished that load but felt weird about it the whole time. The shoes indoors thing gets Americans every time. I have a Japanese friend in Tokyo who hosts travelers. She says Americans always walk into her apartment with shoes on. She has to stop them and point at the entrance, where everyone's shoes are lined up. Most apologize and take them off. but some get defensive. One guy told her that taking shoes off was unsanitary because floors are dirty. She explained that's exactly why we don't wear outdoor shoes inside. He still seemed uncomfortable the whole visit. Kept his socks on, even though she offered house slippers. My cousin works at a grocery store in Sweden. Americans always bag their own groceries wrong. Here, you're expected to bag quickly and move aside so the next customer can be scanned. Americans take their time. They organize items carefully. They chat while bagging. The cashier has to stop scanning and wait. The people behind them in line get frustrated. My cousin has to politely rush them along. They usually get annoyed and say something like, "Sorry for being thorough." They don't realize the cultural expectation is speed and efficiency. I saw an American couple in a German restaurant stack their plates when they finished eating. The waiter looked confused. In Germany, stacking dishes is considered rude. It implies you're doing the server's job or that the service is slow. The couple thought they were being helpful. The waiter unstacked everything and took the plates normally. The couple didn't notice they'd made a mistake. Later, I heard them say the service was weird because the waiter seemed annoyed for no reason. Tipping confuses everyone. I worked at a cafe in France. Americans would leave huge tips, like 20 or 30%. We'd try to give the money back. They'd insist we keep it. We'd explain that service is included in the price and we're paid properly. They'd say, "But you deserve it for good service." We'd have to accept it, but it always felt awkward. One woman got offended when I tried to return her €10 tip on a €15 meal. She thought I was refusing her kindness. I was just following normal French practice. The opposite happens too. Americans get confused when they don't need to tip. A friend in Australia said American tourists always ask what percentage to tip. She tells them tipping isn't expected here. They don't believe her. They leave money anyway. Sometimes they'll argue that servers must be underpaid if tipping isn't required. She has to explain that servers get living wages. The concept doesn't fully click for some people. My neighbor in Italy told me about an American guest who kept apologizing for everything. In America, people say sorry constantly. In Italy, we don't do that as much. The guest said sorry for asking questions, sorry for being 5 minutes late, sorry for needing directions, sorry for taking up time. My neighbor found it exhausting. She told the guest to stop apologizing. The guest said sorry for apologizing too much. It became a running joke. Queue jumping isn't just a British thing. I saw it happen in Japan too. An American family cut in line at a temple. Not on purpose. They just didn't see the line because it curved around a corner. Someone politely told them there was a queue. They were embarrassed and went to the back. But then, the dad kept saying loudly, "We didn't know. It wasn't marked clearly." He wanted everyone to know it was an honest mistake. The Japanese people around him said nothing, but you could feel the second-hand embarrassment. In Japan, you just quietly fix the mistake and move on. He kept explaining himself. A German friend said Americans always seem surprised that stores close early. In Germany, most shops close by 8 p.m., some close at 6. Americans expect 24-hour convenience. My friend had an American house guest who needed something from a pharmacy at 9 p.m. Everything was closed. She was shocked. "What if there's an emergency?" she asked. My friend explained that there are emergency pharmacies that rotate staying open. But regular stores don't stay open late because workers have lives. The American kept saying, "But what if you need something?" Like the idea of planning ahead wasn't an option. Last story. I was at a train station in Switzerland when an American guy asked a worker why the trains were so expensive. The worker explained that Swiss trains are expensive, but they're clean, on time, and efficient. The American said, "In the US, we just drive everywhere." The worker said, "Yes, but Switzerland is not the US." The American nodded like he understood. Then he asked if there was a cheaper train option. The worker said no. This is the price. The American walked away, muttering about European transportation costs. I watched him buy the ticket anyway, because he had no other choice. That's the thing about all these stories. Americans aren't trying to cause problems. Most of them just expect the world to work like home. And when it doesn't, they're genuinely surprised. The confusion is real. They don't know about quiet hours, or queue culture, or metric systems, or different voltage plugs. Nobody tells them this stuff before they travel. So they land in a foreign country and accidentally break unspoken rules. Locals get frustrated. Americans get defensive. Both sides think the other is being unreasonable. I've seen Americans figure it out, though, usually after a few mistakes. They learn to queue properly. They remember to bring adapters. They stop expecting ice in every drink. The ones who stay abroad for a while start to understand why things work differently. They realize that different doesn't mean wrong. It's just different systems that developed for different reasons. And honestly, some of them end up preferring certain European ways of doing things. I've met Americans who moved to Europe and now complain when they visit home that portions are too big or that cities are too car-dependent. The funny part is that Europeans make the same mistakes in America. I've seen British people get confused by American tipping culture. I've watched Germans struggle with American small talk. I've heard French people complain about American coffee. Culture shock goes both ways. It's not just Americans getting things wrong. It's everyone trying to navigate unfamiliar rules. These stories keep happening every single day. Tourists arrive expecting one thing and find something completely different. Someone right now is probably at a European train station asking where the bathroom is while standing under a sign that says, "Toilets." Someone's trying to pay in dollars at a German grocery store. Someone's walking into a Japanese home with their shoes on. And someone's getting angry that a London cafe doesn't have free refills. The cultural confusion never stops. And honestly, that's what makes traveling interesting. You see how differently people live. You make mistakes. You learn. And hopefully, you end up with some good stories to tell. And trust me, these stories never